This is Breaking the 180, still covering everything going on in the world of movies, TV, streaming, and at some point, AI. I'm Alcy Renhefo.
And I'm Sebastian Carrasco.
And let's just get right to it. We're going to jump into the movie phenomenon of the summer. And, of course, we're talking about Barbenheimer.
Yeah, what a time for movies.
Yes.
I mean,
to say the least.
I don't know. It feels like this craze for the cinemas that I haven't seen since Avengers Endgame. I mean, I looked online, because my family's going to New York this week, and I looked at the IMAX for Oppenheimer. Every showing for the next 2 weeks sold out.
Yeah, I actually read a statistic that apparently is very true, which is that getting tickets to see Oppenheimer in 70 millimeter in one of the few screens that projects it in the actual 70 millimeter IMAX format, it's harder to get tickets for Oppenheimer than to Taylor Swift right now. So you have a better shot at getting tickets to go see Taylor Swift in concert than to see Oppenheimer in a 70 millimeter print.
Well, which also begs the question, for multiple reasons, why is this happening now? And what will people get out of Oppenheimer? But we'll get to that a little bit later.
You know, I would quickly say I think what we're seeing here, regardless of what one thinks about these two movies, is a culmination of the fatigue I think audiences have been feeling recently because of the oversaturation of, this obsession with franchises, IP, superhero films. I mean, not to say that we're not going to get any more at least halfway decent ones or okay popcorn entertainments out of those franchises or genres, but there's been such an overflow of the same kind of movie for the last few years that the fact that two major directors have made these two very particular movies that are also in many ways original or not the kind of thing we're used to at the multiplexes, it's created, a different kind of hype that has many positives and, as with anything, a few negatives.
No, 100%. But it is a very interesting moment in time for film. And how the studios will react to this. And as we speak right now, there is a huge strike going on with the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild. Yeah. So how the studios will respond to all of these things going on will be very interesting, to say the least.
And of course, we actually do want to express our solidarity with the WGA and SAG strikers.
Pro-union all the way.
Yeah, because
UPS, I think, is about to go on strike too.
They struck a deal, actually.
Did they really?
Yeah. So it got averted. But in terms of the entertainment industry, with all the changes going on and with all the shifts in technology and the way content is dispersed, the strikes are fighting a very necessary battle, especially for the way writers and actors will be compensated in a world where these streamers amass such vast amounts of capital, and yet writers are starting to be reduced to gig workers. And pretty soon writing for a major Netflix or FX show is going to be the equivalent of driving Uber or something in that gig world. And that makes what we're about to talk about even more interesting, because all of a sudden we have the two biggest movies of the year being films that are not only high budget productions, but they're very much personal projects and films that depend, where the discussion around them revolves so much around the writing and statements that directors are trying to make, as opposed to just whatever the scale of the CGI or something.
Yes, and I think what's really important to mention here, especially for the film we'll start with first, it's a very much a candy-colored film.
Pastel fantasy. Yeah.
Obviously, Oppenheimer, very light subject matter. Especially with that film, I think it's very fun and all that. But I think the fact that it really is trying to be something substantial, I think it's admirable. But I think it also means it's important for us to, in good faith, critique the elements that don't work. So whenever a second movie gets made, hopefully they find ways to streamline. Because as you've probably seen, especially with Barbie, the discourse is very much a binary. It's either the next coming of the cinematic arts, or you have these folks. I'm going to throw out one name like Ben Shapiro, right? Hardcore conservatives who have meltdowns over it, calling it woke trash. They burn Barbies and all of that.
Well, yeah, it's this divide between how does it work as a movie, and then the broader cultural response, and how Barbie as a film, yeah, you can have these very interesting discussions on what works and what doesn't as a movie. But then on another level, it's also now become an object of the all-famous culture wars in America.
So we want to navigate all of that. And, I mean, obviously we know that ultimately it's Mattel who's going to be laughing all the way to the bank, because any word of mouth is good publicity. And, I mean, I think Barbie's already broken records as the highest grossing film based on a toy ever made, and the highest grossing film directed by a woman ever made. So,
which of course those subjects all swirl into that curious moment we're living in.
Hey Barbie, can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
You can find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes.
This is the best day ever.
It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. Do you guys ever think about dying?
Barbie, to recap for anybody who somehow does not know, is directed by Greta Gerwig, who has attained a lot of prominence as an actress. She's been in some very notable films, including Frances Ha, which is still my personal favorite of hers as an actress, directed by her partner Noah Baumbach, which is a fantastic kind of indie millennial manifesto in a way. Frances Ha, it's about a woman in her hitting 30 who's still trying to figure things out, and a millennial, to be even more general, in who's trying to figure things out. But as a director, she's gained renown before Barbie with her two films, Lady Bird, which is a semi-autobiographical film about her high school years, and an adaptation from 2019 of Little Women, which was a pretty faithful adaptation with a couple of blind spots, but overall a decent grandiose period piece. And Mattel approached her about doing a Barbie movie, and their idea was that they wanted to kick off almost like their equivalent of the MCU, like a kind of film series based on their products.
Well, my understanding, too, is didn't Mattel want to do this to kind of save the company?
That, too, yes, because Barbie as a product.
Barbie, you're beautiful. You make me feel my Barbie doll is really real.
And not just Barbie, but most Mattel products. They're not the hot commodities they were for, again, so many things that connect culturally around these things. for someone like Greta Gerwig, Barbie has very potent memories because she's a millennial. She's 37, 38 years old, around there. Now, today's generation of not even Gen Z, because Gen Z's past the point of playing with toys. But for example, Generation Alpha, right, the much younger generation, their version of Barbie and G.I. Joe and all these toys is iPhones and iPads. So Barbies don't sell what they used to. And yeah, the idea was to really revamp the brand, bring it back into the public consciousness.
Hairstyling's fun. Barbie makes it cool.
Cool clips, Barbie, love your hair. Change the color, clips go there.
Go purple, Teresa. Great braids, Christy. Cool.
But Gerwig decides that she's going to write a script with Baumbach that digs deeper than just a mere Barbie entertainment, and the result is what premiered a few days ago.
Yes, and I will say, to me, to mixed bag. I'd say overall, I think I enjoyed it. I mean, as an experience, it's quite fun, and I think on that level, it's great that it works in that way. But in terms of the writing itself and what it's trying to do, that's where it's a mixed bag for me, because when it hits, it has some great moments where it's like, oh wow, fantastic. But when it slacks, I think it gets a little bit too lost in trying to tell but not show.
Well, I think Barbie, the structure of the movie, and again, without spoiling, but to recap for our listeners who are wondering what's going on with this Barbie movie, Gerwig is essentially trying to balance a eye-popping entertainment with a very upfront, unapologetic feminist satire about consumerism, about the way society imposes on women certain ways of seeing themselves and how they should operate within society. And it's all captured through this idea of Barbie, played by Margot Robbie, you can't find more perfect casting options than Margot Robbie playing
who plays
Barbie.
Stereotypical Barbie.
Yes, so it's all set in. It begins in Barbie Land, which is, as the title suggests, it's Barbie Land. So all the Barbies live there, and Margot Robbie is stereotypical Barbie, the
and
blonde.
It's a perfect insular utopia.
Yes.
Every day is a perfect day for Barbie.
Yes, and it begins. It's a plastic. It's a mirror image of American society through.
Oh, not the plastic part.
Yeah, it's like a plastic mirror image of America, which, yes, it's a plastic mirror of a plastic society where Barbie takes a shower, but water doesn't actually come out of the shower head. Her toast pops out perfectly from the toaster.
Liquid doesn't come out of the milk carton.
Yeah, her feet are perfectly arched when she steps out of her high heels. But then you get these funny flashes of things that are still a little off. So, for example, Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, who's stereotypical Ken, because there's also
lots of Kens. There's
lots of Kens.
One played by Kingsley Ben-Adir, who was just in Marvel's Secret Invasion. Simu Liu, who was in Marvel's Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Rings.
Same way the Barbies are also played by Dua Lipa, who contributes to the soundtrack. Hari Nef is also in there. Issa Rae is President Barbie. So it's a whole cast that captures how Barbie, as a brand throughout the years, right, has tried to encompass so many different ideas.
And then there's
personas.
Just Ken.
Yes, and then there's Just Ken. And we can't forget
the new
Alan.
Doctor Alan, who has a great scene. I actually really enjoyed Michael Cera in his few bits.
It's fantastic.
Also, the new Doctor Who plays
yes.
one of the Kens, and one of the elements that I think worked more in terms of showing, like actually showing how it works, is the idea of how men's egos and men's emotional maturity are not very well developed, or there isn't a place in our current society to help men. I mean, of course, it comes down to this idea of patriarchy, and I don't want to overuse the word, but it's a system that's upheld by both men and women in this toxic, disgusting sludge. But one of the aspects is when slightly broken, emotionally stunted men go down the wrong path.
Well, yeah. So Barbie starts noticing, we'll just say, curious changes, which then push her to go to the real world, which is our world, right at the behest of Weird Barbie, played by Kate McKinnon, who's weird in the sense that she kind of looks punkish and twisted because her actual child owner did what we all did with toys when we were kids, beat them up, set them on fire, bury them in dirt. And so when Barbie comes to the real world, she's followed by Ken, who's played by Ryan Gosling as a real clingy dude, right? He's that guy who likes someone but channels it by becoming incredibly clingy and obsessive.
Well, one of the things I talk about in the movie is that the Kens, and particularly Ryan Gosling, is his day is only important if Barbie notices him.
Yes.
Which is this, it's not even codependence, because I don't think the Barbies really need Ken, but the Ken, it's this very unhealthy kind of social parasitism.
Well, Ken is that guy who the way it's written is Ken is that guy who thinks he belongs with Barbie, right? And of course, if you notice, none of the Kens pay attention to plus size Barbie or even pregnant Barbie, right? Who, in a great jab of satire, they have a pregnant Barbie who everyone kind of jokes around was discontinued by Mattel because it wasn't that much of a hit. And Ken is basically that guy who just is convinced he belongs with Barbie, so he becomes incredibly clingy and wants to be there every step of the way. So when Barbie decides she needs to come to the real world, she's driving down this artificial
he
creepy
stops
road.
her, essentially.
Yeah, he pops up from the back seat, and it's like he's basically like, I kind of invited myself, and he's the guy who doesn't get the hint. When Barbie says, "Well, but I don't want you here," it just goes over his head. He doesn't realize that Barbie's kind of saying, "Yeah, but I didn't invite you." And then they make their way to Santa Monica, where they're rollerblading together down the pier, and I actually think that's where some of Gerwig's best lines pop up, where Ken is basking in the attention that the men and women are giving him, whereas Barbie, all of a sudden, for the first time ever, experiences the leering of men.
Now, you see, this for me is where the movie worked. That juxtaposition with how we all want things to be, right? Even Margot Robbie says throughout the film, well, we fixed everything for men and women around the world. What she thinks in Barbie Land, and realizing that absolutely not. But I think my main critique of the movie, and you can call it studio interference, whatever, but where the movie would have really developed those themes is if Margot Robbie and America Ferrera spent more time together in the real world, where you really, for the first time, Margot Robbie really sees how women actually live, particularly America Ferrera.
Now to recap quickly, America Ferrera plays a Mattel designer, a Mattel worker who was an owner of a Barbie when she was a young girl. And now that Barbie is running around the real world, America Ferrera basically saves her from these Mattel male corporate heads who want to put her back into a plastic box, and they're led by Will Ferrell, who plays the Mattel CEO, who also has some great lines that that poke at corporate culture. And frankly, I mean, there's some material there where you wonder how Gerwig got away with it, because
But did she get away with it? Because I mean, ultimately, I mean that's what I've been thinking about the last few days, right? Obviously, Warner Brothers and Mattel probably had the final say on everything, and either they didn't get it or they knew that stuff was in there, but then saw that ultimately the way the film concluded, that it would just I don't know.
Well, we live in a strange time where you have these. It's almost like it's almost like a fulfillment of Rosa Luxemburg's thesis on capitalism eventually consuming everything. And not to get too theoretical or anything here, but
Please do.
But the idea is that eventually capitalism will literally take over every facet of society before it eventually implodes. And the reason I bring up this theory of expansion and consumption is because you're seeing even studios like Amazon, like Netflix, fund movies and products that are criticizing even them, but they don't really care because they know people will consume it anyway. So it's like, for example, Amazon, right, will support a show like The Boys, right, which completely criticizes America and American imperialism and corporate culture and satirizes superheroes, but it doesn't really hurt Amazon directly because people have to subscribe anyway to watch it. So it's almost like Greta Gerwig can get away with making fun of Mattel because the movie's going to gross, $1 billion anyway. So whatever, it's almost
it's that idea, like in games and movies now, where like the punk aesthetic has now been co-opted by the very people that the punk movement inherently hated and wanted to crumble, right? And it does that a little bit here, which is where the mixed bag elements, because yes, the rollerblading scene, and I think if that had been developed more in the movie, because what happens is you see a little bit of it, and then the movie cuts away to do other things. And yes, it does move along at a brisk pace, but I'm talking about the actual core identity of the themes and the ideas in the movie, right? Because what happens is that all these ideas that we should have seen and Barbie herself should have seen, America Ferrera just tells her. And it's like, okay, these are important ideas. And of course, women go through all these things and it's absurd and crazy and unfair. But then it doesn't leave the impact that I think it could have had.
Well, I think Gerwig. First off, Gerwig as a writer has kind of always been more of a tell instead of. This is her most visually ambitious film. Lady Bird, all of its key themes are said through the dialogue. Little Women obviously is a dialogue heavy movie.
Obviously based on the book.
Based on the classic novel. Here, where I give her credit with Barbie is that, and going back to what we were just saying about corporate culture, precisely because everyone knows people will consume this content, Gerwig could have easily just made a breezy, dumb, escapist fantasy. And in many ways, the movie, of course, still has that. The escapism, the eye-popping visuals by Rodrigo Prieto, the Mexican cinematographer, who really brings out that plastic. I mean, you feel like you've walked into one of these boxes that they package the Barbie toys in. But Gerwig, in her style, as clunky and expository as it is, takes advantage of the $145 million, I believe that was the budget that was given for the movie, to turn it into a statement into essentially a women's film. I mean, this is very much a modern women's movie, and to get these ideas across. But because she's trying to balance it out with still trying to give you a Barbie adventure, you kind of feel the material in a funny battle with itself, where one moment you need to have, a car chase and a song and dance number and people flying through the air with artificial clouds and all this stuff. But then you also need to then pause to have the characters express the ideas of the movie. And I think it's her trying to balance what's been her essentially an indie filmmaker style. That's kind of what's been her style before this movie, with the big budget demands of a popcorn entertainment. So
Sure, and of course I understand that, but I think where we slightly disagree is because she put in that effort, and you see so much of that baked in, right? It's not just peppered in, it's really in there. I think that's where I think, yes, I understand. I can only imagine working with $150 million, right? There's a lot of people telling you things all the time. But because she already has so much, I guess we could put her voice in there, I think it is important also to kind of critique that push and pull. Because sometimes it works better than others. Like the dance sequences, I think those are fantastic. And I think they really work. I think they're very well done. I think they actually work in the context of the movie.
Well, and the lyrics of the songs are not brainless. The lyrics, the ideas that come across in the dance numbers are very satirical and very funny, and actually do a better job commenting on some of the gender ideas of the movie than some of the more expository dialogue scenes. And one thing I'll add that I think is also very interesting is, as much of a popcorn female gaze film that this is, sometimes the Ken material threatens to overtake the Barbie material because it's actually a little stronger, right? Because Ken's his arc is actually more convincing in the sense that the statements made there are stronger. So, for example, when they go into the real world, Barbie gets these lessons in misogyny and how people behave in the real world towards her. Ken wanders into a corporate office in Century City and realizes that in the real world, men run things, right? And so he becomes...
But that's the thing, right? They showed that with Ken. They actually showed that process of him discovering how the real world works, but then coming to the wrong conclusion.
Yes, he
but
becomes
then with
obsessed
Barbie,
with patriarchy.
They don't do that, which is very confusing to me.
Well, I'll flip it around in this way, though. I think because, in a way, Gerwig is also saying, women are always observed a certain way in male-dominated, by male films, right? Men are always pretending to know, or men are always trying to give female characters a voice, but through their perspective. In other words, a lot of male directors think they know what women think, or think
how
they
they
can speak
talk,
for women.
yeah, for sure.
And one comment and one reason I think a lot of men like Ben Shapiro and all these guys flip out when they see this movie.
Ken.
He, who was literally created as a doll to be with Barbie, he needs to learn to be apart from Barbie, and she needs to learn to be apart from him, because atomistic isolation and loneliness is the best way to find fulfillment, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be best for Ken if he never sees Barbie again. It'll be better for Barbie if she never sees Ken again. Secular humanism is at its finest. We've reached the apotheosis. Men and women don't belong together. They belong very, very much apart.
What the fuck are you talking about, man?
The movie kind of turns the tables and also says, well, this is men or men's attitudes, our social behaviors now looked at from a female perspective in the context of a popcorn entertainment. And that's why the Ken material actually works almost better in many scenes than the Barbie material, because here we have Ken all of a sudden devouring books on horses and patriarchy, and he goes back to Barbie land and instructs the men on how to become misogynist jerks. But here's the thing. It all goes back to the fact that he feels he's owed Barbie's affections. And so his reaction to Barbie not reciprocating his feelings is to then lash out by becoming a misogynist. Yeah.
And you see, that stuff works better for me. Definitely. And I think
because see the other material in terms of Barbie,
for me that is definitely the weaker aspects.
But here's one thing. Here's one way I look at it. I think also it's almost like, because Barbie is in a sense a women's film, and its audience is specifically, I mean, I think anybody can enjoy this movie.
You're goddamn right.
Let's say the target audience is first and foremost women. It's almost like Gerwig is also saying, well, I don't really need to explain all these things to you about how Barbie would feel if she was walking around the real world and getting to know how men are and all this stuff, because as women, we already know that. Like we're already walking into the theater knowing this. I mean, it is a bit chaotic. Like it's a bit all over the place. It's still cohesive as an entertainment, but it is all over the place, which is why I think you get these diverse reactions to it. Because, yeah, like one moment it's a colorful corporate satire, another moment it's a upfront feminist statement. And to go to your criticism, I especially think that's true in the third act. That's where the movie, I think, does find one of its weakest points where...
Well, that car chase was just so bad and unnecessary. And we mentioned that in our Instagram live. First of all, look, it's very clear that Chevy is they wanted product placement, but I mean, they could have done that in commercials. But it was a car chase that meant nothing. It appeals to nobody, and that's a good 10, 15 minutes that could have been allotted to the things that I think should have been developed more.
Well, yeah. Now, of course, that's where we have to get into the struggle between cinema as an art form and an artistic statement, but also popcorn cinema as a populist.
So let me put it this way, right? Oppenheimer just did all of that.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss it more. And I understand the film we're talking about, but like I mentioned at the beginning, I think the reason it's good to have these discussions instead of just, which we're not doing, but the two sides of overtly praising everything about it, blah, 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 and doing the complete reactionary, is having honest conversations about these mixed elements, whether it was the director who didn't know how to go further with these things, making artistic statement that didn't land, or being pressured by the studio. However that happened, this is the final thing we got.
Well, yeah, and for example, in the third act of Barbie, there's a particular monologue by Ferreira, which what she's saying is admirable, but it does feel like the movie is pausing to explain itself.
That should have been the movie.
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest point.
Yeah,
I'm trying to make.
Like the movie basically pauses in that long monologue to So it's like, hey, if you didn't get what I'm trying to say, let me clarify it for you one more time with this long
Not that it was
speech.
that deep. I mean, it's not like we're talking about, Tarkovsky. Right? It's like really just sitting down and like, okay. It's like you need to pause the movie. It's like, okay, let me figure out. Like, it's not a very... The themes are done well enough. I'm not going to say surface level.
I mean,
but
I'd love a Tarkovsky
of course,
Barbie
but
movie,
a layer underneath that.
But no one
and-
would go watch it.
Of course.
Yeah.
But they're done just well enough
Yeah.
that it works. So it's not like it's a difficult movie to understand, which is why it's so bizarre when they do have the stop moments. Like, there was one that I thought wasn't great, but it was kind of funny when Barbie thinks she's talking to her owner, so to speak, the little girl who plays with her, and basically walks into I guess it was junior high, and the girl says, people don't care about Barbie anymore. That was good. But however, the little speech she does, just like, it wasn't the worst. I actually found it was okay, but I think in that instance it was more like, okay, this definitely feels like an adult writing what they think an edgy kid is like.
Oh, right. No, I did find that scene to be funny because I think Gerwig is...
That was better than the others.
Yeah, it's turning the tables too on the idea of, oh, we're watching a Barbie movie, but you have a kid who essentially represents younger generation Z.
Young Gen Z, probably.
Young Gen Z. Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to lose track. They're not alpha yet, right? Junior high? No, so young. It's like young Gen Z telling Barbie, we don't care about you because it's not like we grew up with you the same way our moms did.
You see, that would have been more natural. What you just said felt more like what a kid would say, but what we ended up getting in that scene was ripped out of
But
White
it was
Noise.
funny because she calls her a fascist.
No, I know. It was funny. No, those elements, but like the actual way the dialogue was performed, it was like this was ripped out of White Noise, which I thought was a complete clusterfuck.
But I loved how then like Barbie is weeping under a tree, saying how she thinks I'm a fascist. I don't even control the flow of commerce. You know, that stuff was funny.
No, but you see, that's where the mixed bag for me. When Barbie says that, I'm like, okay, that's good. That's actually good. But then the preceding part, which I wasn't the worst, but it's like little clunky, but I like the overall idea.
And I don't know. I think a bright junior high schooler, an edgy one, might say stuff like that. I mean, it depends.
Fair enough.
Because see, that's one thing too. I'll give Gerwig credit for. She made a Barbie movie, but at the same time, it's populist enough where it'll appeal to a general audience, which obviously it has. It's made it's already a massive hit. And of course, Oppenheimer does the same thing on another level, but Barbie doesn't treat the audience like it's completely stupid. Like I think it treats some people have already asked me if this is if you could take your kid to this movie. And I've told them, well, the thing is, if your kid is a kid, we're talking, let's say elementary school or junior high, it might not be for them in the sense that they probably don't care about Barbie because it's a different generation, but a bright one might be into it.
It's not about being bright. I think the best way to put it, it's if you can't jive with the sensibilities of the tone and the jokes and the kind of performances and energy from the people, you're just not, there's no way you'll connect with it. And that's okay. But if that headspace of the movie, right?
Yeah.
You can't connect with that, you're absolutely not going to like it.
And for male viewers, I think again, for me the surprise was how Ken threatens to overtake Barbie, because Ken in terms of the comedy and the jokes, he's very well written. I think Ken is a really funny.
He gets to the darker aspects of we've talked about before, like incel culture and these YouTube personalities, a lot of them male, who probably should have dealt with their inner turmoil, but instead became far right like
no, but you
voices.
but I think it's even broader than that in the sense that yes, it's true. I think incels, and I've seen a few online already who short circuit when they see the movie because they can see a bit of themselves in it. But I think again, because it's a film made from a female gaze, I think the deeper lesson in the Ken character for everybody is it's very broad. I think as much, even if you're the nicest, most unmisogynist guy who, whatever.
Or so you claim.
Yeah. Or I think if you could be the nicest guy who, supports, women's rights and protested against the Roe v. Wade overturn or whatever. I think even those guys who claim to be very feminist are not totally immune to the things Ken goes through in the movie, where rejection stings. It can make us become a bit resentful and start doing dumb things. And anyone listening who's whatever, had a big crush and gotten rejected or something, knows that, okay, even if you don't become a 8chan, is it 8chan? I don't even know anymore.
4chan,
you're not
4chan. Fringe element.
Fringe,
but that's particular. And again, one of the elements I liked more was how it begins to address that, like, within these systems where that both allows for the rampant misogyny against women, them not feeling safe on the street, being leered at. It's that very same system where guys aren't taught how to be open and how to figure out these inner turmoils and emotional and emotions, basically.
Well, because Ken basically goes through what's popularly called the friend zone. Basically, he gets friend zoned by Barbie. That's essentially what happens, and of course, it's not that he's friend zoned, is that he doesn't get. He's not really listening to Barbie, or anything that she's saying. He's just looking at everything through his tunnel vision. Now, the fact that we're having a conversation like this over revolving around the Barbie movie, again, I think it speaks to Gerwig's rather clunky, imperfect achievement. It's a curious movie because even in its rough edges, it's still very entertaining. I mean, you're never bored during the movie. It's very
entertaining. For example,
entertaining.
and you brought it up, and I do want to highlight the best aspects of the movie for me were the surrealist elements, 100%. Like the Ken dance at the end was like legitimately fantastic.
That was like Bob Fosse on acid or something.
Choreography, or the scene when one of the best visual gags is when Ryan Gosling, they're trying to, it's not spoiling too much, but the Barbies are trying to trick I don't even know how to describe them. Kens, sure. And he's like singing this really kind of tacky song.
Said I don't know if I've ever been good enough. I'm a little bit rusty and I think my head is caving in. And I don't know if I've ever been really loved by a hand that's touched me, and I feel like something's got to give. And I'm a little bit angry.
To her, where she's pretending to care, but then the camera pans back a bit, and all the Kens are doing the same thing. I was like, okay, that's funny. Or them doing like the 1960s Batman, like driving, but it's a side shot, and they're like, it will pan, and then they go from a boat to a jet ski to like that. Yeah. Those were the best parts for me.
Yeah, those were because funny enough, those are again where Gerwig is making a Barbie movie, right? there's later a scene where all the executives are also on like bicycles going through these artificial Barbie lands, and chanting almost in unison, the same thing together. And yeah, again, that's why I think the movie it's a very interesting film, because it's a visual entertainment. It's a very good summer distraction. I mean, it's a very good summer entertainment
that has some good ideas that are, I'm not going to say half baked. Again, I'm going to give a little bit more credit, but to me, it's like when you've baked a pie or something, and it's like 80% there, but like depending on where you bite into the pie, some of the dough still might be a little raw, and if going onto another slice might be perfectly baked.
Yeah, it's a colorful summer Barbie movie that also doubles as a radical.
Well, I wouldn't say
manifesto.
radical. It's not doing anything radical, but
radical
I would say
by American terms, I think, because
I would just say it has some good feminist ideas in there that can appeal to many different demographics, whether it's men, women, non-binary, different age groups. In fact, last thing we'll say on Barbie before getting into, I was going to say meat and potatoes, but we've already been at this for a little while, is the scene when basically the founder of Mattel, the two scenes when she first meets her, and at the end when the owner of Mattel basically says, it's our job as mothers to step back so we can watch our children grow. I was like, oh wow, like that to me. I was like, okay,
no, that's was very good.
That's a really beautiful moment.
And of course, I forgot to comment on the now famous riff on 2001. I thought that worked too, where she does the creation of, or the origin of man. Or humans, the origin of human sequence.
Let me put it this way, right? When we're talking about like the foundations it's putting down, that's kind of your entryway to that. If you don't jive with that parody of 2001, I guarantee you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, because
that's what the movie does at its best with the humor,
and it's her best visual statement, because it's so the movie's also narrated by Helen Mirren, who just does a great cheeky job, and the 2001 sequence is eventually is a riff on evolution, where you see these girls playing with what used to be traditional dolls, but then they
not
look
just
up
dolls, but dolls that were only babies.
Yes, domesticated, dolls that were meant to give this idea of what proper domestic life should be once you grow up. And then they look up and see this giant monolith, this towering Venus that's Barbie. And it's a statement on how the emergence of Barbie changes everything. Not, it changes the way women society would like them to see themselves aesthetically. But at the same time, this concept that a woman can have many roles in society, which is of course true.
Well, right now we're sitting in front of a Valkyrie Barbie, for example. So
yes, as next to our Oppenheimer bobblehead, which I picked up in New Mexico last year. And because we're going to jump into Oppenheimer, we promise, in a few minutes.
And yeah,
But yeah, this idea, the movie does a funny job and a good job of capturing visually that idea of Barbie as a figure that over the decades has been attempted to be molded and to go with the cultural shifts, to capture first one feminine idea of the American woman and eventually the international global woman. And then this idea of shifting roles, shifting images, which you see in Barbie Land with President Barbie,
actually,
Dr. Barbie, Supreme Court Barbie.
The last thing I'll say, and I think the best theme that the movie explores, in my opinion, I guess all of this is my opinion, but whatever, is is I think Gerwig is ultimately trying to say that it's important to have dreams and want to strive for a more fair and equal society. However, it has to be integrated properly, because in the Barbie land, it's a utopia where nothing bad ever happens. It's literally the perfect day every single day. And I think what she is saying there is that is also an unhealthy bubble to live in.
Well, because Barbie Land is how America would like to think of itself when it's nothing of the sort, right? Barbie Land, it's kind of interesting how everyone's obsessed with the Barbie look and with the Barbie stuff. But again, what I think is interesting about the subversive stuff Gerwig injects into the material is that Barbie Land is actually kind of twisted. It's this plastic world where everyone looks perfect except for the few outlier Kens, like Alan, who's like the regular guy no one pays attention to among the beach bodies. And then in Barbie, no one really cares about pregnant Barbie and weird Barbie because it's...
And Kens only function to be seen by Barbie.
Yes.
And they even make a joke, like, where do the Kens sleep?
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, they're at the beach all the time, right? It's this American...
But then when the reality hits, and of course, even in these utopias, as we just mentioned, you notice the things like, wait a minute, so in order for this to work, what happens to these other elements? And I think ultimately my major critique is when she introduces the real world, and I think part of that is if you just become jaded and cynical, that's also unhealthy for yourself. And it's not just as simple as saying, oh, if you go to Barbie Land, it's all going to be fixed. No, it takes real change, but I think if it would have been explored a little more in the real world with America Ferrera and her daughter, it would have hit. But for what we see and what she ultimately says at the end, it's about finding that balance between the dream, but also not ignoring some of the, more, I guess, darker, sadder thoughts. Because that's also extremely unhealthy.
Right,
what they call toxic positivity.
Well, which is, again, what I find, which is what I thought worked when Ken comes back to Barbie Land and introduces misogyny to the other Kens. Because, I'll be honest, part of me was fine with the movie not spending too much time in the real world, only because by now it is a gimmick that's been used in so many franchise adaptations. So, like the Pokemon movie or the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, right? All of these, it's all about the character coming to our world and hanging out here for a long time.
Those barely even try to explore themes whatsoever.
Right. Whereas
this one would have actually benefited from it. But I get what you're saying. Yeah. When it's done cheaply, then it's just a gimmick.
It's a
to make a movie happen.
And again, it's kind of funny how Gerwig pulls this off, because you just suspect that her mission was to sell the Mattel brand, and if you're trying to get Barbie popular, right, you got to show off all the Barbie stuff. And
well, she sure as hell did.
Yeah, like what was that great?
I mean, she just saved Mattel.
What was that funny scene? There's like a scene where, again, it's like she's doing the assignment, but in her own way, where Ken starts throwing Barbie stuff out of her dream house, and they pause on every bit of clothing to kind of this is the disco celebration.
I think you just said something which perfectly encapsulates everything we're talking about. It's you've been given a prompt at school to write an essay, and you have some very strict prompts on what exactly the movie needs to be. But as the writer, you try and mold it the best you can.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? And not to necessarily excuse, but just to kind of explain what we saw. Yeah, it's going to have problems. It's going to be mixed bag, and you have to acknowledge those. But you also have to acknowledge the constraints of the prompt.
And at the end of the day, I I would not be surprised if the production design and costume design get awards recognition.
Well deserved.
And
And the soundtrack to even one or two of the songs will get Best Original. Dua Lipa had a great song. Billie Eilish had a fantastic song in there.
Yeah.
So
well, and even the original, the songs, the Ken song.
Oh yeah,
the dance number. It's what's the line? She just sees me as a friend. When will she see me as a 10 or something like that?
Something like
so
that.
like that, and then the cinematography, of course, which is. Preto, I think, has done better standout work with other directors, but
it works best in the Barbie land. All the real world stuff just looks like.
Well, because the Barbie land, again, he brings to life so well that plastic look. And honestly, Margot Robbie, who's been in many notable films throughout the years, from Wolf of Wall Street to I, Tonya, which I highly recommend. I, Tonya is such a good movie. But this will probably be the role that defines her forever. It's her
Iron Man.
Yeah, as
it's
heavy as that
Iron
sounds.
Man.
She will now forever be Barbie, in the same way that Cillian Murphy will forever be Oppenheimer. So let's switch now to the other half of this big movie phenomenon that's going on, and that is Christopher Nolan's new grand film.
This is a national emergency.
Detonator charged.
We're in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
We have a 12-month head start. 18. How could you possibly know that?
We've got one hope. All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected here. A secret laboratory. Keep everyone there until it's done.
Which is both a big departure for this most famous of current directors, while still featuring a lot of his recognizable elements. For, again, listeners who have no idea what the movie is about, the movie essentially recaps the life of the physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, who is a major historical figure because he led the Manhattan Project, which produced the world's first nuclear device during World War II. And he directed the project at Los Alamos in New Mexico, which at the time was just a mesa, which was turned into an artificial town for the scientists to do their work. Today, it's a nice town where one of the world's most important laboratories is based. And the movie charts Oppenheimer's life from his days as a young physicist up to the point where he faced scrutiny later in his career during the McCarthy years because of his associations with left-wing and communist groups in the 1930s up until the beginning of the war. And let's just jump right into it.
Well,
this is an impressive film.
Before even getting into the movie, we'd like to just tell our viewers that you can also see this discussion on Oppenheimer kind of like an epilogue to our two-part retrospective on Zack Snyder's Watchmen and the HBO series and some associated films that we compared them to or wove into our discussion, like Failsafe and a bunch of other great movies. Trust me, you'll be able to understand everything just fine, but this is the epilogue to that. So we'll continue some of the themes we talked about there, but you won't be lost, we promise. And we're going to add in some new ones, particularly, and I'm very excited to talk about this. I shouldn't say excited because of the subject matter, but the conversation I think will be exciting, is talking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki from the Japanese perspective.
Yeah, which is very important to discuss. especially because, and this is not a spoiler, although I mean with biopics, it's always kind of funny to say they're spoilers because we're talking here about nonfiction turned into drama.
Well, certain things like with Strauss, I suppose, but something like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that is one of the defining moments of the
Human
modern
history,
era
yeah.
and human history. So,
but overall, this is a very impressive effort by Nolan, who up to now has mostly been known for these very brainy, highly entertaining movies.
some are brainy, but I would say excellent high concept movies.
Well,
that
he's always playing with puzzles and scientific processes and
exploring
yeah.
the ideas of time and the perception of time.
And of course, he's one of the world's most successful filmmakers, especially after his Batman trilogy and these huge hits like Inception and Interstellar and Dunkirk. Oppenheimer signals an interesting transition for him into this world of very, well, first off, nonfiction, but also this world of the biopic as an epic. Other critics, like Matt Zoller-Seitz, have already made comparisons to the kind of movies you used to get in the 90s, like Spike Lee's Malcolm X, Oliver Stone's Nixon, which I would say are still superior films, but this is Nolan trying to play in that same vein and that same
And
zone.
Matt Zoller-Seitz was right when he said that you can feel the DNA of a movie like The Insider.
Yes, in this movie. Yes, Michael
I
Mann's
mean,
The
the
Insider.
moment the movie finished, I completely understood why he made that comparison.
That's another excellent movie, which we'll be discussing later on in our Michael Mann series.
We're still working on that. Quick side note, it's one of those where we really want to put in the right amount of research
Oh, yeah.
and all of that.
Oh yeah, and Oppenheimer, it's in that vein of these directors who would use their clout to then do a particular kind of passion project, which is not just, some big flashy entertainment, but something richer.
Well, more than just a highlight reel.
Yes.
Which tends to be the case for biopics, maybe because the director doesn't know how to approach it, or the estate says no, or they know that these figures are still alive and there's a little bit of trepidation there. But then you have movies, one of my favorite movies of all time, one of the best biopics ever made, The Aviator.
Yes,
it transcends. Yes, it goes through the life of Howard Hughes, but why I think it's so special is because it works with themes that the character of Howard Hughes embodies. Or a movie like Walk the Line, or Oppenheimer now, or
Malcolm X,
Malcolm
by
X.
Spike Lee, or I always bring up Nixon because I think that's one of Stone's best and most underrated movies, where he takes the character of Richard Nixon,
played by the great Anthony Hopkins,
who was nominated for that movie, and he uses the film to explore themes of power, politics, but also how Nixon's own personal insecurities lead to his downfall.
Same with Vice.
Exactly. Dick Cheney's life gets turned into an epic recap of 20th century American life. Nolan, again, is aiming for that scale with Oppenheimer by taking Oppenheimer's life and turning it into a reflection on many things. On a grand scale, Oppenheimer's life in this movie encompasses what America in the early 20th century was all about, right? The labor struggles, the ideological battles that were going on in the 30s, that pre-World War II world where being an intellectual meant gravitating towards circles where revolutionary socialism was seriously discussed. The scientific revolutions were going on in physics, quantum mechanics. Einstein had just published his theory of relativity, which completely changed everything. And then once World War II begins and Einstein writes his famous letter to FDR about the urgency of exploring the possibility of an atomic weapon, how all of these things form part of Oppenheimer's life, while at the same time he himself is a very complicated, flawed, brilliant man who makes, he's capable of such brilliant achievements while at the same time making the most microscopic mistakes that lead to bigger trouble down the line.
And I think that's one aspect of the movie that impressed me. When biopics are either mediocre to bad, I'm going to throw a little bit of shade at Ali here, which, again, we'll talk about more in depth.
Michael Mann's Ali, yeah.
It's when you take the most surface level criticism and just like throw it in there. Like, okay, he was a womanizer. Okay, it's in there. But what I liked about Oppenheimer is it really displays his arrogance mixed with his genius, mixed with his womanizing, and how all his actions have repercussions, either in the short term or the little slights, the microscopic slights that he would make to someone like Strauss that leads to these basically kangaroo courts.
Yes, so Leo Strauss, who's played by Robert Downey Jr., and
he's gonna win an Oscar for that role.
Well, let's see. We still got a way to go for the year.
I'll eat my words, but
okay,
let's say nomination.
Yes, I definitely think him and Cillian will get nominated. But he plays Louis Strauss, who was the head of the Atomic Energy Commission, and Nolan, he needs to find a structure for this whole life he's trying to lead. So what he does is he uses as a kind of central binding point how Louis Strauss is trying to get a position in the Eisenhower cabinet. He wants to be the Commerce Secretary. And so there's these black and white sections which deal with how later in Oppenheimer's career, Strauss had offered him a major position in the Atomic Energy Agency, but they had a falling out. And that's
he was just a lowly shoe salesman.
Well, yeah, the movie does this interesting contrast between Strauss as and Nolan famously had Robert Downey Jr. and Cillian Murphy look at Amadeus. Because he wanted to give them a kind of Salieri, Mozart relationship where Louis Strauss would like to be seen with the same level of respect as Oppenheimer, but he's obviously not at that guy's level of brilliance. And so a kickoff in the plot is...
And the thing is, Oppenheimer knows it.
Yes, and so a kickoff in the plot is of the whole movie is when he meets Oppenheimer to offer him a position. Oppenheimer happens to see Albert Einstein.
Well, because he still needs to think about it, which is one of the first slights.
So Oppenheimer happens to see Albert Einstein by a pond, and he goes to speak with him, and Louis Strauss wants to go join them, but Einstein passes him by without even looking at him. And he assumes Oppenheimer must have said something negative or derogatory about him to the great scientist. And that kind of kicks off, if you will, pun intended, a chain reaction throughout the movie. Because it is about how Oppenheimer is a man who lives so completely in his head that...
Which Cillian Murphy there are a lot of the film is done in close-ups. It feels like a less obnoxious Pablo Larraín.
Yes.
but a lot of that is because instead of doing these big monologues, you're just seeing I'm not even going to call him Cillian Murphy. You see Oppenheimer like just lost in there, lost in the brim of his hat.
Well, yes, because, obviously there's a lot of discussions in the screenplay about scientific processes and calculations, but they don't overtake the material because Nolan also he's a very visual filmmaker. So what could be said, instead he expresses through a lot of jump cuts and intercuts. For example, you'll have Oppenheimer staring at the ripples of a puddle, and then Nolan will cut to images of particles splitting, atoms dancing around. Fireballs. When Oppenheimer discusses his theory on black holes, instead of getting into the deep process of his calculations, Nolan visualizes it. He cuts to when Oppenheimer discusses the death of stars and how the death of a star would also consume light. He cuts to a shot of stars being sucked into a black hole. And it's interesting to contrast that with Barbie, right, where everything has to be explained. In Oppenheimer, you don't have to have a PhD in physics,
but what it does do,
what's being said.
It asks you, it demands that you pay attention.
Yes.
Now,
it doesn't treat the audience like we're stupid, which is essential for a movie like this.
And you could see that. And one of the first things I said when we got out our screening at 2 a.m, the reaction from the audience, it kind of felt like for the first time in a long time, a mass audience actually had to digest a movie.
Yes.
You could feel like people had to actually think about what they just saw and not just talk about, oh my God, Spider-Man this and Spider-Man that showed up, which is, it's fun, but that's what big studio movies have been for the last long time.
Well, for me, the most interesting aspect of this Barbenheimer phenomenon is the Nolan movie. Because of his clout and his fame, he has managed to generate the same kind of hype that his Batman movies generated, but over a movie where you have characters discussing reading Marx's Das Kapital in the original German, or the politics of the Spanish Civil War, and how Oppenheimer believes in a lot of the aims of socialism and communism, but he's not willing to completely give himself over to joining the party, and how his lovers are idealists, and how he has to harmonize this with then joining the war effort to make the bomb for the United States, but then how he has debates with General Groves, played by Matt Damon, about sharing information with the Russians, who during the war were our allies. Yeah, this is stuff that you don't have to process.
But they knew it was tentative.
Popcorn movies.
And one thing I'll give huge props for, and even some very good historical movies, they'll sometimes literally pause the movie to frame an event that is about to happen, an event that is happening, or a very particular character. It stops the movie. There's a movie called Operation Mincemeat, and Ian Fleming, who was part of the war effort, the spy effort, they literally stopped the movie to say, "Wow, Ian, you spend so much time writing these little spy novels." You're just like, dude, come on. And he doesn't do that.
Well,
it has one of the biggest casts
of all
since
time.
Avengers Endgame, except you might not even realize they're there because they're implemented so well. All the physicists, right?
Well, and they're not cameos. They're actually delivering essential dialogue, and they're actually partaking in the flow of the plot.
And one thing I liked, and I think what often happens in movies that include scientists, even if they're not in the same field, they're kind of just seen as a homogenous force. I'm not even talking about physicists, but biologists, mathematicians, techie people. But in this film, I really enjoy kind of the battle of the different sects of physics at Los Alamos, that people left the project because they just did not like what the other physicists were proposing.
Well, yes, the Nolan does a great job of giving you a sense of the insular nature of this particular community,
but also about ego.
Well,
I would say the seed, the atom
Well,
of this whole movie is how ego can blind individuals to the reality right in front of them.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that what I meant by insular is how he gives you the sense of this community of a particular discipline, in the same way you have academic departments, right, where professors all are competing with each other and the egos are out of control, or how in the arts everyone in the classical music world knows each other, or in the movie world everyone knows who's who, and everyone is in a kind of competitive mode. And in this movie in particular, it's captured very well through the character of Edward Teller, who is another key historical figure because he's the father of the hydrogen bomb. And the idea here is that Oppenheimer is trying to run the project to make a plutonium device, which will eventually be the first atomic bomb. But Teller keeps interrupting him and pushing this idea that they should actually make a hydrogen bomb. And yeah, at one point, Teller just flips out during a meeting and says, well, I can't work with, there's a scientist who calls him a prima donna, and Teller's like, I can't work with this man. And he threatens to leave. And Oppenheimer has to, play the den mother and go and try to calm him down and tell him, look, I'll meet with you once a week to talk about this H-bomb idea that you have. But you get that sense from everyone, how everyone has a particular discipline that they're very proud of, and they're all trying to not only work together to make this bomb, but they're also all trying to show off too, that like I'm the master of my field. And
my thing is actually correct.
Yes, and what's wonderful about the screenplay too is that it captures how Oppenheimer, as brilliant as he is, he can't escape the traps of his own ego, which is what makes Louis Strauss eventually become petty and vindictive against him. And you see that in this great, it's a movie where the little details count a lot. So there's this great moment early in the movie where Robert Downey Jr. introduces himself to Oppenheimer as a self-made man. And Oppenheimer says, well, I can relate to that. And Strauss, for a brief second, becomes very excited. He goes, oh, really? And Oppenheimer says, well, yes, my father was one. So he's kind of poking at Strauss for not having his level of education or his level of training. And Strauss offers to introduce him to Einstein. And Oppenheimer's like, oh, it's fine. I've known him for years. And earlier than that, Strauss says, oh, look, it's Einstein, the greatest scientific mind of our time. And Oppenheimer goes, well, of his time. So almost, and the subtext is, I'm the greatest mind of my time because I made the atomic bomb.
And he does that with everybody. And
yes,
just done naturally. And
yes, he's not aware of who he's insulting.
And the thing is, when you see what happens with Strauss at the end, I think some people might feel like it comes out of nowhere, but this is one of those things that, like, if you have to just pay attention. However, what I will say, because it's a very dialogue-heavy movie,
yes,
and we should address this now,
yes,
because it's literally
yes,
the heartbeat of the movie. The score, done by Ludwig Göransson, is fantastic.
Very well.
But
we're good.
It doesn't stop. Or like almost ever. Only a few times. It's basically non-stop music. But the thing is, with the intensity of like a Tenet or The Dark Knight, but the problem is sometimes you can't properly hear what characters are saying, and the whole film is around the little details and what characters are saying.
Well, I think it's a good way to address how this movie, and I've read this too from critics who praise it. It has the elements of Nolan that work best, but it also has his particular elements that also tend to be the worst elements of a Nolan movie, which is precisely that, this idea that he always feels the need to have to over accentuate moments with the sound and the music. He can't just let the intensity of the performance carry the scene.
Well, it's not like the what do you say, in the 90s there was an Oppenheimer miniseries?
Yeah, so a good there's a couple of interesting previous projects that you can go check out to compare to this one. But in the late 80s there was a fantastic BBC miniseries also titled Oppenheimer, starring Sam Waterston as Oppenheimer in a fantastic performance, really, really excellent performance. And in that movie, the conversations and the intensity of the things they're discussing is so engrossing, it doesn't need any flashy effects or music. You're just engrossed with Oppenheimer and these scientists trying to figure out how can we make this device. And, a perfect comparison that I would make is in the Nolan movie, they emphasize a famous moment in the project when Teller made this really extreme calculation where he thought that if they were to explode a nuclear device, it would create a chain reaction that might set the atmosphere on fire. And in the Nolan movie, Oppenheimer goes to visit Einstein to check out the calculation to see if it makes sense. And of course, Einstein's like, oh my God, this could, this means the atmosphere could be set on fire. And so, of course, Nolan just raises up the score with a bell, that just pounds the point home. And he cuts to, I admit, it's kind of cool. He cuts to the sequence where you see the atmosphere set on fire. So Oppenheimer's imagining this happening. In the BBC miniseries, when they're discussing this, there's no music, there's no fancy special effects, but it's still engrossing because you are watching these guys pondering, wow, what if we blow up the world by making this bomb?
You see, yes, that is the curiosity of this movie. And I really have been thinking about this movie. I liked it a lot. I didn't love it, but I still need to think about it more. I liked it a lot. And as much as I love music, Ludwig Göransson is incredibly talented. He did the score for Tenet, which I think is incredible.
Great.
But it's that weird contradiction, right? For Nolan making a movie that's so much about the details of what people are saying, he also doesn't trust that that's intense enough for people to be absorbed into.
It's almost like he's trying too hard to keep you entertained. Like I need to entertain you. So the editing of the film, for example, is fantastic. He is a great editor, but it's constantly on the move. It's a 3-hour movie where moments that in another film might be reflective here are just always pounded. So if Oppenheimer is riding a horse with his wife through New Mexico, it's got to be a wide, it's got to be a wide tracking shot with pounding music and, intercuts between Oppenheimer
it's like
and
he started the chain reaction and just couldn't stop himself. And I don't know, it's so curious, right? Because I don't know, for me, and again, I love historical dramas, I love history, I love all this stuff, but it's like, it's a little bit, it's self-indulgent. I mean, that is the word.
Oh, sure.
And it's because, and yeah, it drives me crazy because you don't need to do that all the time. And these conversations of the physicists, figuring out how to make the payload the right type of explosive, it's really engrossing in itself. And the dialogue is so good and the snappiness of the character dynamics is so good. You don't need all the intercutting. You can still follow it. It's not the kind of bad intercutting where your head is
It's not a Michael Bay movie or anything.
But and then with the pounding score, and it's like not all. For example, the best example where, and this is where I felt like it did it way too much. There's a scene when Jason Clarke who is, again, an amazing character actor. He is a lawyer, a prosecutor, who is like grilling Oppenheimer, right, to renew his security clearance. And there's a particular point where it's becoming just so much, so overbearing, and the screen starts to go white, and they filmed it so it looks like Oppenheimer's world is shaking around him, but they're starting to shout at each other. But he also raises the score, and that's how I was like, whoa, this is okay, I get what you're doing, but it's like, whoa.
Now, I confess, I've seen the movie 3 times.
You are a stamina champion. I would like to see it again too, but you are a champion. It's been within the span of like 5 days, not even a week.
Yeah, I've seen it 3 times. The last 2 times I saw it with a 24-hour break, because I saw it with you and our good friend and producer Jose. On Sunday.
Who wrote, just a quick shout out, he's on Letterboxd. We'll actually link it below. He writes some really great reviews, and he did one for Oppenheimer and Barbie. So
yes, so shout out, yes, check him out. All 3 of us are on Letterboxd if you want to look us up. And Jose's reviews were particularly good this week. But I saw it with you guys on Sunday, took a break Monday. Then I saw it Tuesday night, last night with my sister. so I took a 24-hour break and saw it again.
I feel like the score was probably still reverberating in your head by the time you got back into the theater.
Yeah, well, I'll say this: I enjoyed it all 3 times, but it's true. The elements that always feel over the top just always feel over the top, and sometimes it depends which theater you're in. So.
You saw it twice in IMAX, or just once?
All 3 times. So all 3 times.
And you're not deaf?
No, well, it depends where you're sitting. If you sit right next to the speakers, yeah, you're done. But if you sit in the middle, you're good. But but one observation I made last night was how I think. We referenced Oliver Stone. We referenced Michael Mann earlier. I think he's also trying to channel Ridley Scott in his own weird Nolan way in those scenes, where Scott, for good or ill, does the same thing, where he thinks, this might be too stuffy and boring for a normal audience, or let's say just a packed house where not everyone is a history buff. So I have to pump it up to make it exciting, or they're going to get bored. And I think that's where Nolan slips sometimes, because every single shot in the movie is on the move. Even if it's a shot of, I'm also thinking of that shot where Oppenheimer is just standing there observing them bringing the first bomb that they're going to test in. Same thing. Tracking shot, loud music, Oppenheimer just watching the bomb being brought in on a truck to be hoisted up for the test. You don't really need that to be heart pounding. It's just fascinating on its own. But Nolan seems to feel, if I don't pump up the volume, my audience is going to get bored because they're not really into this to begin with.
Or the other thing you told me, which could just be the vision of the movie, is the first thing you said when you told me your just very, very first impressions of the movie is you felt like Nolan saw these shots on the paper as he was reading American Prometheus, and he heard this music in his head. And it's almost like he had to. It was a need to just have that on the screen, to share what was in his head with everybody else.
Oh, actually, that's a great point. And for listeners, the book we just referenced is the one the movie's based on. It's called American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin, which won the Pulitzer Prize for nonfiction in 2005. And yeah, it feels, the movie has that feeling you have when you're reading a good book and your mind becomes so engrossed in it that you start forming a kind of mental movie in your head. So the movie sometimes does have that urgency of, when you've read something really good and you want to go share it with everybody, that's the tone of the movie, where he's trying to channel all 600 pages of this book through a visceral like a visceral vomit, if you will.
Well, you know what? I'm going to make a comparison, and this is one of the films that we talked about for a minute in our Watchmen two-parter. Failsafe.
Yes.
Failsafe and even Strangelove, but particularly Failsafe for a reason I'll say in a minute, and Oppenheimer. They're movies that deal with the policymakers and the ideas men during a crisis, during wartime, which is a unique perspective from that material. Because especially with World War II, right, we think of Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, The Pacific, boots on the ground, right? That's what people like to see. Even Tarantino, right? We like to see that. But this is a very different perspective. And Failsafe, in a way, the energy is there the whole time. You sweat during the movie, but there's no music the whole movie. And you feel the pressure. You feel supposedly the people that lead the country unable to make and resolve a decision. And Oppenheimer feels very much in that spirit, but with adding too many different bells and whistles.
Well, yeah, it's a good comparison because you also have these two movies dealing with the same intellectual content, but made in different periods in time, right? So Oppenheimer,
of course.
Now Failsafe is
Sidney Lumet. Ooh.
And it's frankly, it's still a better movie. I mean, it's a much better film. But they're both dealing with this critique of power that I think is unique to Nolan, which again I think shows growth in him as a director because he deals with the stupidity and the cynicism
pettiness
of power,
too.
The pettiness of power. There's this fantastic scene in Oppenheimer where they're deciding on targets, on where to drop the bomb.
It's probably, I have 5 favorite scenes in the movie. That one's in the top 3.
And this American official,
I think it's either Secretary of State or Defense. I don't remember which one.
One of those, but he's going through targets.
He has a list of 12.
And he says he's going to spare Kyoto because of its cultural significance to Japan, but more importantly, because it's where he honeymooned with his wife. It's a fantastic moment because it captures how Kyoto was probably saved more by that than by the cultural considerations. And then there's this great scene later on with President Truman, which, you know what, let's not spoil. It's a surprise who plays Truman for any listeners.
Yes.
But that scene too is chilling in the way it captures the blindness of power and how nobody wants to pay attention to Oppenheimer. His logic anyway, that now that America has the bomb, the Soviets are going to want to make one, and not just the Soviets, all the world powers are going to want to have one of these, one if not many of these weapons because the world has changed.
And look at where we are now.
And that's another credit I give Nolan. He could have easily made a hagiography, a rah-rah, hey, the bomb sucks, but we needed to win the war kind of argument. He really, after the whole flash and impressive practical effects sequence with the Trinity test, which is done with an eerie power, he actually goes into very serious moral questions about, well, because we could, should we have made this thing? What's the psychological effect on Oppenheimer?
And why didn't anybody think of that when they were making it? And that's why I think the undercurrent of this film is ego. All these guys were so obsessed with pulling off one of the greatest scientific achievements in history.
Yeah.
they were just obsessed with that. And of course, yes, they were in a war, and they keep saying, well, we can't let the Nazis have one of these things. But they get wrapped up in their obsession that the idea, when they're talking about the payload, it's like, yeah, against whom?
Yeah, because then the question arises after Hitler is defeated, well, should we keep making this thing? For what? And then, yes, you do get the classic debate over whether, well, should we not do it and risk a large-scale invasion of Japan that'll result in many deaths? Or should we use it to also, save lives and manpower and of course, the Soviets were also going to jump into the Japanese invasion. So it was going to be a massive undertaking. But at the same time, but you do get the sense, and again, kudos to Nolan, he really does follow that line many historians have agreed with recently, which is the bomb was really dropped to flex, to kind of just show the world, we have this, so we are now 100% solidified as the global superpower. Because they briefly make the point during that cabinet meeting we just mentioned. Someone wonders, could we just test the thing in front of the Japanese so they could see we have this thing? Do we really have to drop it on a city?
It's about sending a message.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, Nolan does a good job balancing all that in what is kind of like Barbie, what is a populist piece of filmmaking. Yeah, it's not it's not one of these movies
It's
like
not an A24. It's not an AFI.
Yeah,
but you know what? I think this is a perfect point because you just mentioned, right? We're talking about the bombs are being dropped on the Japanese population. Not just one, two, don't forget. And
Nagasaki,
remember, Tokyo was already firebombed at that point. And some people, because everyone needs to complain about everything, no matter how little or how problematic it is, well, what about the Japanese voice? And my response to that is, well, that's not what this film is about. But I think it's really important. And that's why I hope that this film will get curious minds to explore the Japanese perspective, to talk about films like
Black Rain,
Shōhei Imamura's Black Rain, or the animated movie.
Oh yes, the fantastic animated movie that came out, I believe, in the 80s.
I think it was 1986. Barefoot Gen.
Yes, Barefoot Gen, which is an astounding anime that just captures the sheer horror of what the experience of living through the atomic bombing of Hiroshima was. And if you want to really dive into it on a literary side, there's no better book than John Hersey's Hiroshima, which was published in 1947 and shook the conscience of the world. It was first published in the New Yorker, and then it was published as a book, and it shook the conscience of readers back then, and it still does. And it's an easy read. It's just like 150 pages, and it's from the perspective.
It's probably not an easy read, but it's a short read.
Yes. No, you're right. Yeah, in terms of the content, it's devastating reading.
And that's probably an even better pairing with Black Rain.
Yes.
Shōhei Imamura's, and I'm gonna phrase it like that because Ridley Scott directed also a movie called Black Rain with Michael Douglas. Not even remotely, but
Not even in the
because,
same planet.
I mean, it's a very haunting film, and I think all of these work as a trinity. I think as a starter, I mean, obviously American Prometheus, but Oppenheimer, Hersey's book, and this one, because all the things they're talking about in Oppenheimer, now in Imamura's Black Rain, you see the very direct effects.
Yes, Black Rain deals with the subject matter of the Hiroshima survivors, but how they were also later ostracized by society. How you were essentially tagged if you had survived the bomb, and it was hard to find suitable partners. It was hard to get married because you were considered tainted, and not only that, but
they were also walking. I mean, it's essentially a ghost story happening in real time. How a lot of these people. Well, I mean, look, guys, I don't think you can even comprehend. Imagine you've never seen this flash of light in your life, and then suddenly, a year after the fact, 10 years after the fact, 15 years after the fact, up to about 75 years after the fact, people are still feeling the after effects of the radiation, of the Black Rain. But imagine at that time, you don't exactly know what the hell is going on. You just know that you're basically tagged both on a societal level, but a physical level. And the film, it's set in a small town, but I think it represents Japanese society as a whole, that yes, people wanted to live their lives again, to finally find normalcy, but they're also seeing people drop dead in front of them, right? They have now become walking ghosts.
Well, if you watch, especially in the first act of the film, I mean, it's a beautiful movie, but in the first act, and then if you read Hersey's book, Hiroshima, the experience of living through the atomic bombing, I mean, it's absolutely horrifying. You can't even call it Dantanian. You can't even...
And to think some people are trying to claim that nuclear bombs aren't real.
Oh, well, that's just stupid. Again, the internet, it's kind of like what Umberto Eco said about the internet, that all of a sudden social media is giving complete idiots the same platform as a Nobel Prize winner. So he calls it the invasion of the idiots, because this is real history. This is what happened. Again, if you watch Black Rain, if you read Hersey's book, the experience of having lived through that is something not even a Hieronymus Bosch painting can capture. And here's the thing, and I think Oppenheimer does a very good job at this as well with its ending, which we won't spoil, but in its last shot, like the book I just mentioned, Hiroshima, and like Black Rain, not only are these historical recollections, to be honest, they're kind of reflections on the future, because the key message of the movie and Black Rain and books like Hiroshima is that it's not that this is just something that happened over 70 years ago. This is now a threat we live with forever in the nuclear age. So when you read the news and you read these worries about what might happen in the Ukraine war if the superpowers decide to use nuclear weapons, Putin just moved nuclear missiles into Belarus. There's this idea that if Russia feels like its existence as a state is threatened by however the war grows or continues, the nuclear option might be used. Well, it's not a joke. You just have to read the testimonies of the survivors and watch movies like Black Rain.
I mean, the things people saw in Hiroshima moments after that occurred.
It's indescribable.
It's and I think, I don't want to say beautiful, but what's so poignant in the film is it presents this to you. It doesn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
but it also doesn't overdo it.
You know, I saw an interview with Nolan that was very interesting on, I think it was on CBS, one of these morning shows that they do. And one statement he said about wanting to do Oppenheimer was because he grew up in the 80s when, the Cold War was really starting to heat up right before the Soviet Union collapsed. And it's the Reagan era, right? So there was always this apocalyptic talk about the possibility of nuclear war, which you see reflected in many movies of the time as well, including one excellent drama I want to quickly recommend named Testament. If you can find that movie, it's one of the best movies speculating what life would be like in suburban America in the aftermath of a nuclear war. And Nolan talks about how he grew up conscious of that fear, which is very true of Gen X, the people now in their 50s who grew up in the 80s. Nuclear war was a constant fear in the culture. Millennials and Gen Z, we got a little taste of that, I remember, during the Bush years when everybody was wondering what the hell George and Dick were going to do. But it's not the same, and I think we've forgotten just how real that danger is. And again, I don't know what it is, social media, the internet, even with this war going on in Eastern Europe, I don't think we're still that conscious of what nuclear war means. And I think that's why stuff like what you just mentioned happens. These idiots who go around saying that, these conspiracy theories that, nuclear weapons are fiction or something.
I mean, talk about a sense of privilege. It's not even a money thing. I mean, what a spit in the face to Japan, really.
Yeah.
But no, I think, look, if watch these movies and I mean, it's heartbreaking, and especially Black Rain, because I saw this the other night to prepare for this discussion. The tragedy of the aftermath is people it's a trauma, it's a shock doctrine, right?
Yeah.
It's a trauma, an unfathomable trauma, so people would like to move on, but you have these constant reminders of death around the corner, these walking specters, and the protagonist of the film, this big thing is, she wants to get married and stuff, and her aunt who passes away as a victim of Hiroshima, her last words before she dies is, "I just want to see my niece get married." I mean, there's a haunting scene when the character's taking a bath and she's combing her hair, and then
all the hair comes out. Yeah, the hair. Well, which was very common in the days after. Again, the way radiation sickness works, it's still a mysterious disease that scientists are still studying and trying to figure out exactly how it breaks down our molecular structure and our DNA. But it is a very ghostly thing, and in Hersey's book, he describes how people who weren't, let's say, violently burned or injured during the initial bomb attack thought they were fine, and they just carried on, trying to put their lives back together. And a few weeks after the bombing, all of a sudden they would just start combing their hair and clumps of hair would come off their head. And it just hit them that they actually didn't escape unscathed. They actually were afflicted with something, and they just didn't know what. And the same thing happened in Chernobyl decades later during the accident in Ukraine with the Chernobyl disaster. So it's very, 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 very real. Another film I want to quickly recommend that you should also check out before or after Oppenheimer is the documentary The Day After Trinity, which the Criterion Channel has actually been making available for free for a limited time. So even if you're not subscribed, you can check it out on the Criterion Channel.
And that reminds me, Black Rain, you can get it, you can rent it cheaply on most platforms, but it will also be available on Criterion on July 31st.
Oh, fantastic.
So no excuse not to check it out, because it's an important history, and for those who want to complain about different voices not being heard, There you go.
There you go. Yeah, and Day After Trinity was made it was nominated for the Oscar, and it came out in 1981, which means the filmmakers were able to interview a lot of the original participants of the Manhattan Project who were still alive, including Oppenheimer's brother, Frank. And it's a fascinating documentary because the information you're getting is great, but you also can see how the participants, how haunted they remain by what they partook in. And at the same time, how on a lighter level, you see how they miss being part of a big moment in history, how they really enjoyed being part of this group and the camaraderie of it all, and how they were aware that they were making history and being part of great events. And I'll share one little thing. I love for people to discover the documentary on their own, but this is one of my favorite sections of it. A woman shares a story about how she was driving down a highway in New Mexico the morning the bomb was tested at the Trinity site. And of course, she was far away. She was like more than 100 miles away because they calculated where to explode the bomb without it, destroying a whole city or something. And she says, I'm driving with my sister, my younger sister, and all of a sudden she sees the flash of the bomb and she goes, "What's that?" And she goes, "Here's the thing though, my sister is blind." So that gives you a sense of the power of this weapon of the atom, of the splitting
and
of
since
the
you
atom.
spoke of that, I know we spoke about Hiroshima, but since I think a lot of people, I don't know, the highlight of the movie is when the test actually happens. It's a very intense. I mean, that's when the score ramping up really works.
Yeah.
And you have some of the physicists making bets on what would happen.
Yeah.
You have people just like unsure on what the hell is are we at a safe enough distance? Will it set the world on fire? Them lifting it up, everyone getting ready. But the most haunting part of it, well, there's also a scene when Josh Peck is about to press the button,
right.
And he's like sweating, his hand is trembling, and then they hit the button, and you see the flash, and it's just dead silent.
Right, it's very accurate to the actual, yeah.
Can you imagine? So this is just at Los Alamos, and then you get the shock wave, but imagine that twice happening in a major city.
Oh,
you just see that, and then 20 seconds later, it's like the gods have come down and just.
Oh yeah. Well, the first chapter in Hersey's book, Hiroshima, is all about that. How people were just going about their normal daily lives, and just this silent, blinding flash, followed by this horrific, explosion and destruction of everything. And kudos to Nolan for not overdoing the scene either with corny CGI. He really goes for that practical effects look, but it has an eerie realism because you really feel like that's what it must have felt like to be sitting there watching this thing go off, with the silence followed by the shockwave, and the way the explosion looks massive but organic at the same time, which is unique when we're used to seeing these things be done all the time with, terrible special effects. In fact, if you want to make another side-by-side comparison, there's an awful 1989 movie, or 1990 movie, starring Paul Newman named Fat Man and Little Boy, which at the time was considered an awful movie and is still considered a really bad movie about the Manhattan Project. The scene where they test the bomb compared to the Nolan movie is so terrible. It looks, the special effects look so like a really bad computer graphic, and no one's done it the way. Usually the smarter movies cut away and just show you the astounded scene of the scientists looking at an astounding shot, a shot of the scientists looking astounded at explosion. Or they use some really bad digital effects. And no, Nolan pulls it off very well. I forgot what the particulars were, but he did explode an actual...
He used a lot of tricks, which he said he won't reveal exactly how, but it was a lot of different methods. But what was so curious to me is most movies, that would be the end of the movie. They might have another scene.
Yeah.
But then there's a third act.
Yes.
And in fact, and this is the thing that surprised me, I liked the third act even more.
Yes, the third act is in the tradition of those really riveting political thrillers where the director knows how to make the battle of wills exciting. Because the third act is all about Oppenheimer being challenged later in his career by Louis Strauss and having his security clearance threatened precisely because of his associations with communists in the late 30s, including one of his lovers, Jean Tatlock, who's played by Florence Pugh, who is, I gotta say, it's a very well-written affair because it speaks to how Oppenheimer's voracious sexual appetites and his impulsiveness later lead to trouble he never imagined. He never expects to be sitting in front of a committee of bureaucrats digging through his private life and asking, why were you meeting with this woman? What was your relationship
and
with
also
her?
the fact that she died.
Yes.
She committed suicide.
Which, of course, again, this is not a spoiler because if it's history, if
Actually,
you look
and
it
one
up,
thing before I forget, I really want to stress this. I appreciated in the second act, in the Los Alamos stuff, it didn't become a political, like a espionage thriller, because there was a mole. And that's other directors would have said, well, we need to make it interesting. And that's what the movie would have been about, is to find out what the mole was doing.
Yeah, well, Carl Fuchs, a British-German scientist, later turned out to have been passing along secrets to the Russians, which actually, the movie doesn't go too deep into this, but he gave them, for the sake of going through the real history, he gave blueprints of the Trinity bomb to the Soviets, which helped them develop their own atomic bomb. And yeah, the movie, instead of using that as a cheap thriller element, it's another case of Oppenheimer's, that weird combination of bad luck, then mixing with his own mistakes later on.
His blindness.
Yeah.
Because in the color, because black and white is following basically Louis Strauss's perspective, and in color it's Oppenheimer's. And he wasn't concerned about that. So it's in the background. He hears about it from people at the AETC committee or whatever it's called. They keep bringing it up. And then at some point, I don't know if it's Matt Damon or someone else tells him, oh, yeah, we found out who it was. Actually, it was him.
Yeah.
And you know what? I respect that because, yeah, I'm sure another director, Universal would have said, well, but we need to make it like exciting and interesting. And no, it's background because for Oppenheimer, he wasn't focused on that.
Yeah, even his relationships with women are interesting in the movie because instead of building it up into some saucy obsession with the sex and with the romance, no, it's interesting how the women around him also, they almost function as Cassandras, right? Like they're also trying to kind of shake him awake and make him see things he's blind to.
Well, because he's not good with people, and they make it abundantly clear, and that's why Matt Damon and Jean Tatlock and his wife, played by Emily Blunt, Kitty, who has a fantastic scene with Jason Clarke.
Oh yes, near the end, yes.
But it's like they're giving him great life advice. They aren't. Well, they're not pulling what people do with Elon Musk, which is brown nose him,
right?
Because they're afraid. No, they tell him like you're doing all these things wrong. This is not how you interact with people. This is just bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, like Gene Tetlock warns him to not push away the people who actually get him and get what he's doing. And then later on, Kitty is the one trying to warn him that he's being naive with these cutthroat politicians, and he should actually fight a little more to protect himself and stop being naive about people that he doesn't realize he's actually humiliated, who are now out to get him because people are vindictive. There's a great scene where she warns him that he humiliated Louis Strauss at a congressional hearing, and he just brushes it off, saying, "Oh, but that was 6 years ago." And Kitty says, "No, yeah, but you don't get it. Like, very actual vindictive people have the patience of saints. They'll wait forever to get you."
And that's what I loved about the third act. It's just, it very much explored, the dangers of human behavior, right? You think that these people in high power, we see that it's been exposed a little bit more now, but how you kind of still retain the same high school behavior, except you're dealing with, atomic energy.
Yeah, it's that kind of biopic where, again, this may surprise detractors of Nolan. It might even surprise some of his fans, that he manages to do what a lot of good directors do with these kinds of movies, where he takes a real life with all of its contradictions, its complications, its historical implications.
Doesn't turn him into a saint. Doesn't mythologize him.
Well, he pulls genuine drama out of it. He really turns it into cinema. It's not just a recap, It's not just, again, a highlight reel, as we said earlier, which is what the worst biopics do. No, he really says, okay, what kind of story can I tell out of this life? And you can tell the story genuinely interested him. The story of Oppenheimer genuinely interested him, so he tells a very good movie with its Nolan-esque imperfections, with the moments where the music could have been toned down, the moments where he could have been a little more patient with his shots. But despite all that, it's an engrossing movie. It's hard to deny that it's a very entertaining
all over
movie.
The world.
Yeah, it's a very and hopefully these movies always have positive and negative aftershocks, and hopefully it'll open the door. It'll show the studios that people really are willing to go see good original content about historical figures they may not be experts in, but the way you present the movie will interest them enough.
Well, just like Oppenheimer at the hearing, I think you're being a little bit naive. I think what's going to happen is, well, one, who knows what the popular discussion will be, but I think studios will learn the absolute wrong lessons from all this, as we've seen time and time again. And I'm just kind of concerned about that, right? Just like when we talk about good representation, when you have mainstream films that know how to portray certain, underrepresented groups properly, what then happens more often than not is in the big films, they get pigeonholed into one-dimensional characters.
Sure, but Black Panther, for example, big hit for Disney. But because of Black Panther, yes, you've had a lot of bad movies come out, but you've also had good ones like Judas and the Black Messiah, Till. Because of this, you may get a lot of schlock, but at the same time, another good filmmaker may just say, "Hey, okay, here's my chance to make the Lennon movie or something."
And I'm sure influencers will take all of this with the patience and the respect it deserves, and they absolutely will not start pulling ridiculous little stunts to get millions of views like the Oppenheimer challenge. I'm sure none of that will happen because people are rational, sane human beings.
They're going to go to the Trinity site now to do their little videos. In fact, you know what? I'm very happy I went to Los Alamos last year before the movie came out. It was nice and empty. I got to check out Oppie's house and the log cabin where the scientists hung out, and the museum where you can see replicas of the bombs and even soil samples of the Trinity site. By myself. There was no one. There were no tourists or anything there. Now that's probably going to change. I think if you go to Los Alamos this fall, you're going to bump into a lot of Nolanites walking around. But still, both movies worth checking out, worth discussing. It's not a Top Gun summer for sure. 2023. And on that note, we hope you enjoyed this discussion on Barbenheimer, and stay tuned because we've got our next chapter of the Chronicles of Man coming up. We're going to be talking about man in the 90s, including Last of the Mohicans, also the arc of his interpretation of America. So we're going to be talking about Last of the Mohicans, Ali, The Insider, how those movies speak to us today.
Wait a minute. You left out a movie there. What about Heat?
Oh, well, that's getting its own episode.
There we
that's
go.
what I mean.
Because,
Yeah,
once again, people are going to ask.
Yeah.
So, yes, Heat is going to get its own special episode. But, I'm very excited for that because, as we mentioned in our first episode, kind of our thesis, he is trying to do, in a sense, the work of a historian. So now you really get to see this through different aspects of American society.
Yeah, or a dramatist interpreting history, right?
There we go.
That's always been an interesting debate, which Oppenheimer raises also, the debate of movies and history. And what's the difference between a dramatist and is there such a thing as a cinematic historian, basically, has been a debate raging for many years. So we'll be talking about all that in our upcoming next chapter of Michael Mann, and
we'll be keeping an eye out for the Venice Film Festival. There are a lot of great
movies coming
premieres.
And we are building up our Man series to culminate with the premiere of Man's Ferrari coming up this fall season. So a lot of stuff coming up, and of course more Dewey Recommends, because it's going to be a busy movie season.
Yes.
Even post Barbenheimer.
Indeed it will. And then I'm sure we'll have some surprises. I'm sure we will end up having some great discussions on some underrepresented films.
Many
we already
good
have a
ones.
list, so we have a lot of good stuff. We're going to leave our socials down below, including Jose's Letterboxd, because he writes some great reviews on all sorts of different films. But we'll leave you with that. Food for thoughts. Till next time, everybody.
Till next time.
Peace.
Keep Barbenheimer.
Would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says,